I'm Dominique Vargas. I utilize she, her pronouns, and I'm our Executive Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at Western Oregon University. I just wanted to briefly introduce myself and let you know how this professional development opportunity for students came about. This last year, our Senior Leadership Council was offering fireside chats, one per term. And during our first fireside chat back in November, we were approached by students who were really interested in learning how to navigate disability services and accessibility services in the workplace, as well as LGBTQ2SIA services in the workplace. So we are offering two different opportunities, today's opportunity and another one in May, to help meet the needs that these students have requested. So we appreciate you engaging both in person and virtually in this opportunity and allowing us to serve the needs of students directly. And we request continued feedback from students to make sure we're offering programming and opportunities that you feel meets the needs that you currently have or may have in the future. So please, anytime, email dei@woo.edu, and we're happy to try to accommodate requests. Without further ado, this afternoon we have a program prepared for you with a speaker, a panel, and then an opportunity for one-on-one engagement with those that are here to present to you today. And we're going to kick things off with Scott Hatley from Insight. So I welcome Scott Hatley to Western Oregon University and to present before you today.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate that warm introduction. Thanks, Dominique. I'm glad to be here. Seemed really quiet around campus today, but you guys all came, so that's great. So thanks for coming. So I'm here to share a little bit about the work I do, a little bit about my story, and share a few resources with you as well, and some thoughts as you think about your transition from college. I assume people are in the room are at different points in your transition, either just about to transition or still have a year or two to kind of process through it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the first slide here in just a moment about Insight, but let me share a little bit about my story and background really quick so you kind of have an idea of where I'm coming from and who I am. So I actually was born with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I'll be 45 years old here in a month, not too many weeks. And that's a huge accomplishment. Most people with my condition don't survive to 45. So I've really learned how to basically play the hand I've been dealt since the beginning of time. So my parents got the diagnosis at 4.5, and the doctor said, you know, they were kind of asking for advice on what to do and how to approach things. And he's just like, you know, you're going to grieve for a while, and then you're just going to have to pick up the cards and play the hand you've been dealt. And so that's what we've done my whole life, is just really leverage the obstacles I face to create opportunities. So I'm an Oregonian, fifth generation Oregonian. I graduated, grew up in West Linn area, went to University of Portland for college. So that's my journey, and started an organization called Insight. And so Insight is focused on helping people with disabilities leverage the obstacles in their life, as well as changing the culture in society around disability. So helping to change hearts and minds. So that's our focus. And we are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. So it's been exciting to see the progress and the opportunities that have come during this 20-year journey. And I will say right now, this is the most, I would say, receptive time for people with disabilities in the workplace and in the community and such. So it's an exciting time for finding opportunities. So that's really good news. What does Insight have to offer? So you can see up here on the slide, we are really focused on the key part of leveraging obstacles. And so we have a scholarship program. That's our oldest program. We have a curriculum program that's geared toward transition students from high school, and then we do job fairs. And we just had a big job fair at Warner Pacific College in Portland last week. So we do about 6 to 7 a year, and it's all geared toward bringing in 20 to 25 employers, and they offer jobs and opportunities. And so it's a neat way to kind of make those connections for people. And so if you're looking for a job, especially, and you want to look for one in Portland, definitely look us up and keep that in mind. They're throughout the year. Our next one will be at Clackamas Community College. So that's the main programs that we offer for students with disabilities. We also have the Get Ahead events too, which is a virtual event. So then there's the Changing Hearts and Minds piece, which is really about leading culture change. And so we have a magazine called The Understanding, which is all about pushing positive perspectives. We have some fantastic articles on people of all kinds of disabilities. The woman we just featured has Down syndrome. Her name's Karen Gaffney. If you have a chance, you should look her story up. She's amazing, and she's one of the foremost individuals with Down syndrome advocates here in Portland and like around the country. But she's in Portland, so she's amazing. Disability awareness, we go into companies, corporations, businesses, organizations, and we do an awareness presentation. We're doing one with On Point Credit Union right now. We're also doing one with Goodwill Industries. So we're really working to kind of help meet employers where they're at and help them get a different perspective on what disability is and maybe what it isn't, especially now that we have so many visible and invisible disabilities. I think sometimes people don't fully understand what it means. And so if we can help them sort of have that light bulb moment, that's huge for us. And then, let's see, there's one other point up there I wanted to share with you as well. Partnerships. One of our values is profound relationships. So we like to partner with all types of groups, businesses, colleges, high schools, everybody, because we really believe in the power of partnership. We can't do it alone. So next slide. I was asked to talk about some resources, and honestly, I feel like resources are important, but I was really drilling down on some key points that I think if you take some of these items up here, these bullets to heart, I think you'll be able to figure out the resources you need. There's so many resources out there, and I know the panel, I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more about that. But instead of focusing on that, I just kind of wanted to highlight a couple aspects of basically that transition. So being the change is what I had mentioned up there. And so what Insight's all about, we're about shifting perspectives and creating awareness. It's actually in our name. Insight's a mashup. You maybe noticed it's a misspelling and wonder, what does that mean? So it's the hybrid of the two spellings, I-N-S-I-G-H-T, which basically means to see into a situation and get awareness and new perspective, and then I-N-C-I-T, which means to move to action. So really, in all of our programs, either with Changing Hearts and Minds or with Leveraging Obstacles, we're all about how do we move people to action so they can unlock their potential and awaken opportunities. And that's what we've been doing the whole time. So when I graduated from college many years ago, 2001 to be exact, maybe some of you may have just been born about that time, I was kind of in the same situation you were of what do I do, where do I go, what do I want to do with my life? And I didn't exactly know this is what I'd be doing. I had ideas, but I didn't know how to exactly cultivate that. And so I actually didn't work or do anything the summer after I graduated. And I just kind of thought that was okay. Like, it gave me some time to think. And I definitely believe that you don't have to jump right into a job. Like, I think that you need to kind of be able to take the moment to think about it. But what happened is I had some friends that were launching a for-profit business, and they were doing it in healthcare, and I knew they were going places, and I wanted to be part of that. So I kind of latched myself onto it. And so I was able to learn from them a lot about how do you build your network. And it's never too early to start doing that. And yeah, maybe some of you heard the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it really is very true. Like, knowing people really helps you go places. Not that knowledge without that isn't helpful, because it is, but if you know people, they can help you make connections. And so I would say do some of that and learn how to kind of develop that skill. And I always get anxious. I always got anxious. So, come up with ways where you can overcome anxiety if that's the challenge you have. And, sometimes it's talking to people and get yourself warmed up before you talk to the people you want to talk to at networking events. But just find those opportunities to get out there and talk to people. And definitely coming to events like this and interacting with the panel is going to be good. That's good step. Developing the employable skills. You've probably heard this a lot from others, but even if you're trying to find a job, like find volunteer opportunities, find clubs to be a part of. Rotary, I was always looking for people to join. All kinds of service clubs. There's all kinds of volunteer opportunities. There's some professional organizations you can join depending on your major. I would just encourage you to start young. Like, do it right away. Don't wait till you're an adult or you're all adults. I mean, until you're like in your career. Start early. And then, asking for accommodations is important. And in my life, I've had a lot of that. My accommodations have been pretty simple. They've been, like a desk adjustment or an adjustable desk, some kind of mouse that's, adaptable. And then I've kind of been part of the technology revolution with on-screen keyboards and voice recognition. So I've used all of that. But, at times in school I got some extra time on tests or taking tests in a different place. So in the workplace, there's still opportunities. And again, like I kind of said, it feels like we're at a real receptive time for that. And so being able to ask for accommodations as you need, like you shouldn't be afraid to ask for them, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. And then the last 2 points up there is really being resourceful and proactive. I've seen just different people that I've interacted with at times, and they kind of like sit back and let life kind of happen as opposed to sort of pursuing their dreams and, going after what they want. And so I would encourage you all to not be afraid to just like tackle your dreams, however wild they might seem to people. Starting a nonprofit at a young age, I didn't, know what the heck I was doing, and there was never a right time to do it. And yet I learned so much doing that and just pursuing that dream. So, you have to be resourceful and, proactive with that. So that's been kind of important. And then just, staying resilient and persistent. You're going to face obstacles, which is kind of a transition to my next kind of bit of talking points. Is you're going to face a lot of obstacles. We all do. And it's really how we react to those obstacles and challenges that we're facing when things don't necessarily go the way we like them to or want them to. And so how do we react to that? And that will determine a lot of success. These are a few of those points. Again, there's a lot of resources out there that kind of fall within all these points that are out there, and they're available. Unfortunately, resources are just not in one-stop shop. We always want to try to combine resources together, but they're just not out there. And so that's where I'm just saying, it's sometimes even people that we interact with are looking for specific tips or things, and sometimes it's not about what you would do, what the steps are. You're going to figure it out on your own, but if you have some of those ability to keep at it, then that you're going to be successful. So that's a good transition to the next slide. This is an important term at Insight. It's one of our mission statement points. We kind of have the trifecta of our mission, which is changing hearts and minds, leveraging obstacles, and unlocking potential. And so for us, you can see these words here, and maybe many of you are familiar with these words. Maybe they're kind of new, or maybe you haven't thought about them in this way. But you can kind of see the definition on the screen there. And, really, we know that obstacles are barriers or things that could get in our way or hinder us or make our paths more difficult. We also know that there's ways to leverage those opportunities. So one of the people I like to talk about a bit is a guy named Archimedes. He was a mathematician. I don't know, has anybody in the room heard of Archimedes or know who he is? Okay, yeah, a few people, nice. So he was definitely, before our time. None of us were alive back then, and what is it, 500, whenever. But he had this saying, and he's done a lot for mathematics and even physics. And for instance, the law of the lever is one of his things. But he had this saying that he said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to stand, and I can move the world. So it's a little bit kind of tongue-in-cheek, like it's a little ridiculous, like how could you possibly move the world? But that just he is saying is that if you gain the right leverage point and find the right advantage, you can actually do a lot more than you think you can. Maybe some of you have heard the term turning lemons into lemonade. That's kind of one of the things I think about when I think about Archimedes, is, how do you take a difficult situation and turn it into something really fantastic? And so, in a way, that's kind of been my journey, is taking the challenges I faced and figuring out what can I do with it. And honestly, I believe that's partly why I'm still living, is I've had a purpose. I've had a reason to kind of keep focused. So I would also encourage you, if you can do some work, like think about what is my purpose? Like what do I want to do? What can I contribute? There's so much we can do, and so much that maybe you haven't even realized this potential. And again, I didn't realize I was going to be running a nonprofit when I was in your shoes. So you never quite know. So let's see, what else did I want to say? I kind of found a story that happened to me when I was going for an internship, is that I had wanted something in publishing at the time because I was a communication major, and I didn't do the research ahead of time to figure out, is the building accessible or where is it? It turned out it was in Old Town Portland, and no one told me that there was like a whole flight of steps that went up, and I didn't ask. And so I learned a lesson there, and in a way it kind of closed the door, but it wasn't too bad because I don't really actually think that was where I was wanting to work anyways. But it also helped me realize I need to be my own advocate, and I need to ask those questions, and I need to find out, like, if I need to know, like, it's on me to figure it out. I mean, there's no obligation for them to have told me, and I never told them I had a disability or was using a chair. It kind of goes with that disclosure piece where, for us at Insight, we always say, disclose when it's going to cost you the job. And so I was like, I'm not going to tell them. I'm just going to sort of show up. And so obviously I got what happened. But so in a way that kind of helped shape some perspectives for me. And then another quick story about leveraging obstacles. So one of our old offices in downtown Portland, and Melissa, I think you've been to that office. It was in an older building. So we had those like levered door handles. And so I wouldn't do this now, but when I was younger, I had a little more strength and ability. And so I was able to like leave the office alone. I was the last one there, and sometimes I needed to work a little later, and the rest of the team wasn't there. And so what I did is I figured out a way to leverage the obstacle of like, how do I close the door and make sure it's locked when I leave so that, someone can't break into the office. And so I put like 5 rubber bands together, and I think, did you see that, Melissa? Yeah, you saw it. Yeah, you did, right. And so we put it together, we tied it around the door handle so it was there, and so when I left I could just sort of grab it, and it had enough elastic in it so that I could maneuver my chair around. I wish I had a video of that, because that would have been pretty entertaining to watch, but you can kind of probably envision a little bit how it worked. And so I was able to close the door. Sometimes it kind of slammed shut pretty quickly, but it worked. And so that was kind of a perfect workaround for kind of being there alone. So that's an example. So I have 3 points to kind of share on defining obstacles, and that will probably take us close to our time for the panel. But I'm actually in the process of writing a book about leveraging obstacles. And so I've outlined a number of principles in that. So if all goes well, I'll have a final rough draft, I'll have a rough draft this year for sure. But I wanted to simplify it because I don't need to talk about 8 or 9 principles here. So I've pulled out 3 kind of points that I just wanted to share with that I think could be helpful as you're kind of thinking about your next step and thinking about, transition and how to navigate life with obstacles and disabilities. So first of all, defining the obstacle. Would you all agree that we all have obstacles we're facing? Yeah. So really, some of the obstacles are obviously visible. I have a very visible obstacle. I will tell you that it's probably not my most impactful disability, if you will. I would tell you that I've got other disabilities that are more challenging to deal with over the years. So I've been a perfectionist at times. That can limit me in different ways. I've procrastinated at times. I've been afraid of failure, or just fear has held me back. So those have been way more challenging disabilities than anything, and those are obviously not visible. So we're trying to kind of frame the idea at Insight that everybody has obstacles, and some are more visible, and some are more invisible, but we're all kind of dealing with stuff. And so, how are we working through that? And so, we're all having to figure out, how do we leverage these things in our lives that are challenging to be able to do what we want to do. And so part of what talking about here is just being able to identify what some of those are and being able to kind of wrap your mind around it. I know there's obstacles I faced that it took me a while to figure out what they were and how to identify them. But once I did, it really kind of opened up opportunities in my life and helped me be able to move forward. Let's see. I know sometimes some obstacles I'll deal with, and I just kind of get over it, is I go to friends' houses. Some friends have steps up to their house. I dealt with that in college quite a bit. Even sometimes navigating parking lots. The college I went to, University of Portland, has one huge parking lot, and the cars are really compact to each other, and so sometimes it's an obstacle to navigate all those. But I'm really good about finding some kind of path or way around through it. So that's kind of a visible example. Obviously, I'm probably the only one in this room that deals with that kind of thing. But obviously, you all have some other things. So the next point is finding your lever. So I kind of call this leveraging your strengths. We've used the term compensating assets before. Sometimes that's a little hard for people to fully understand. What do you mean compensating assets? But basically, it's finding a way to overcome your challenges, your weaknesses, your shortcomings, and leverage the strengths that you have. So it's kind of a strengths-based approach. So an example I like to give about how I've done that. So I have this ability to not forget names and faces ever. Well, not ever. There's times I do. But part of the reason that's been the case is that I have dexterity challenges. And so I can't just write down notes if I meet somebody or if I'm in a meeting, unless I'm in front of my computer and it's on Zoom. I have to kind of figure out, how do I tuck that away in my mind? And so that's a way I've compensated for my disability, is that I've come up with this way to remember and develop this power, I guess, if you will, superpower. And it's happened over time, and maybe I had some natural abilities, but that's something I've done. And then the other thing is, a secondary lever for me is I'm somebody who's an open book. So you can ask me pretty much any question, and I'm happy to answer questions. That's not the case for everybody with similar conditions, I found. And where I think that's good is, part of it is it helps break down maybe awkwardness and uncertainty people might have, or questions they have, because I'm willing to sort of help satisfy some of that curiosity. I often will say that just because we become adults doesn't mean we still don't have those young kid questions or those 6-year-old questions, but we kind of maybe have a bit of a filter, realizing that we can't just ask any question we want, or we need to ask it in the appropriate ways. But that doesn't mean we don't still have the questions. So if I can help sort of create, or do some of that curiosity, that's helpful. So So that's been helpful. And then I think just being flexible. I've just learned how to just go with the flow sometimes. And that's been a helpful asset in different ways, more so than I ever realized might be the case. And then, so when you kind of think about it, maybe think about some of the strengths you have and some of the obstacles you have and how you can use those strengths to overcome that. And I think, again, like the not forgetting names and faces, it's like a muscle. So the more you work on it and practice it, like anything, you're going to get better at it, you know? And so it's important to just kind of be able to leverage and go with it sometimes. And, you know, you're going to figure it out. There might be those awkward moments, and sometimes you just got to embrace those awkward moments. And I think, you know, you're going to learn so much. So, so the last point I'm going to leave you with is dynamic adaptability. So be dynamically adaptable. And so kind of what we're seeing is that, you know, don't be afraid to go with things and adapt. With Insight, we've had to adapt so many different times over the years. I know Melissa has even heard a lot of our plans and how we've ebbed and flowed and evolved. And going into the pandemic, we were kind of in a tough spot. It was kind of, we were a little bit bleak. We had to like reduce our staff and we had to recalibrate. And so we could have easily gotten discouraged and given up and said, oh, we can't make it work. But we really had to like dig in and adapt and figure out how can we do things virtually and how can we just weather the storm for a few years, which was actually one of our themes for our gala. And we actually, the pandemic was actually a positive thing for us in a way. Not necessarily for all the things that came from the program in itself and just people that couldn't necessarily come in person, but the fact that it kind of gave us a moment to rethink, like, what are we doing and how do we want to do this? And so part of our change then became we want to do more speaking, more content through our trainings, through our curriculum, so we can reach a larger audience beyond just, let's say, doing a job fair and doing a direct service. So that was kind of a positive. So if we hadn't been willing to adapt and go with it, I think we would have been in a much different spot than we are now. So that was one thing. And then, have you heard the saying, all our dreams and aspirations are just outside our comfort zone? Yeah. Well, again, I found that to be 100% true in my life. If you had seen me 20 years ago, I would not be sitting here like this. And it would have been a lot different presentation and probably would have been sweating bullets and who knows, maybe you would have seen beads of sweat going down my face. Anyways, I was much more anxious and nervous. And it really, starting an organization, helping run it for so many years, put me in positions where I was uncomfortable a lot, and I grew a lot, and I learned a lot. And so I would say don't shy away from uncomfortable moments. Like, put yourself in as many uncomfortable positions as you can because, with a healthy uncomfortable position. Let me preface that. So I would say, because you're going to learn so much about yourself, and you're going to learn about others, and you're going to learn about what you think or what you can do, what you can't do, what you thought you couldn't do, what you really can do, like so many things. And so that's important. And then just the last item, obstacles are really powerful. So if you can learn to embrace them, I'll give you a quick story. I've been on several boards of directors in Portland, and one of the boards I was on, the board chair there wanted to have a party for the board, a gathering, and she lives in Northwest Portland, and again, another situation like the internship. Her house is an old Victorian house, and maybe some of you are familiar with Victorian houses, but most of them usually have a pretty large flight of steps just going up to the front door. So her house was no different. And so again, I didn't learn my lesson the first time. I didn't realize there's so many steps into the house. So what was unique about the situation is it was myself and a bunch of board members who were a lot older than all of you in this room. And so if it were college, the friends would have just said, hey, we're just going to lift your chair up and take it up the flight of steps. When most of the people are in their 50s, early 60s, probably not. And so we had to kind of figure out, how do we do this? And so where this was a real powerful experience is that everybody was helping leverage this obstacle. It wasn't just me trying to figure out, how do we do this? And so we quickly ruled out the lifting the chair up the stairs, and it turns out there was a side entrance, and the owner of the house had some boards, and so we were able to kind of put together boards, surprisingly, and I was able to find a way to come in the side entrance. But I think what was great about it too is it was an eye-opener because everybody sort of thought about it, and even the director of the nonprofit was kind of like, man, this is so exciting, because it was like enriching cultural-wise for our organization to be thinking about this. So if they hadn't been so willing, if I hadn't been willing to kind of go with it, then it would have been an obstacle that would have kind of crushed the evening, and I would have had to move on and figure something else out. So really, I guess the gist is to be positive, be flexible, and really be open to new opportunities that come your way. So I don't know, I think we're hopefully pretty close on time.
I think we're
Perfect. Cool.
perfectly on
So,
time.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was incredibly inspiring, insightful, and informational. I'm going to ask the panel members to come up to the table here. And while they're doing that, I'll do a little bit of introductions and give you a little bit of a laydown of the activities here today. So my name is Adri Clark, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the Center for Professional Pathways, our career center here on campus. So while they're kind of setting up, I'm just going to talk a little bit about, first of all, I want to say thank you, students, for being here. Thank you for going out of your comfort zone and coming here today and learning as much as possible. And please use the opportunity today to ask all those questions that you've been wondering about. You've got great experts here, or people with personal experiences that they've overcome obstacles and leveraged their strengths and have a lot to share with you. So I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves, and then I might have a couple of questions to get us started, but I would really love for you all to ask questions as well. Just know that after the panel, sort of formal panel is over, our panel members are going to go out to the room, and you can sit with the panel members in small groups and ask your questions without, and that's not going to be recorded, and you can just have that moment to ask the question that's important to you. So I'm going to go ahead and have the panel introduce themselves. If Tori, if you wouldn't mind starting and just sharing your name, where you work, and what type of work you do.
All right. My name is Tori Stutzman. I own Sparklet Designs, a local web design and graphic design agency here in Monmouth, Oregon. I graduated from Western in 2017. And a fun fact for this year, I'm also president of our local Monmouth Business Association.
Thank you.
My name is Sheila Blain. I'm a state vocational rehabilitation counselor in North Salem.
I'm Tanya Kipper, and I am a vocational rehabilitation counselor in North Salem also. And I went to school at Western also. I graduated from the Mental Health and Rehabilitation Counseling Program in 2019.
And I'm Scott Hatley, co-founder of Insight and executive director.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm just going to start. I'm going to ask if Tanya and Sheila could share a little bit about what they do, how they would help people transitioning from school to work, and what are some different ways our students might possibly work with you in the future.
First, I'd like to ask, can you hear me okay, or would the microphone be better?
The microphone would be better.
Is it on? Hello, hello?
Yes.
It is on? Can it come up higher? Doesn't. Well, I took it out of the thing.
Perfect. I like
Okay.
how you.
So, where to start? So, first of all, we never ask that people assume that they don't have a disability just because they don't have Social Security benefits for having a disability. So, if you're struggling with your education, learning, mental health, physically, of course, but if there's any kind of struggles, physically, mentally, emotionally, cognitively, and you don't have documentation, maybe you do from your doctor, but sometimes doctors may have mental health records, but you're having cognitive issues too, and that's not something that they've evaluated. Go ahead and apply for services, and if we need more information, we can also request assessments to be done, and we pay for it. So I just wanted to make that clear first, that you don't have to have a diagnosis already to apply for vocational rehabilitation services. Once you meet with us and explain how what struggles you're having, what difficulties you're having, Tanya and I, as counselors, we do the intakes. We have, I think, 10. How many counselors do we have in our office?
9 or 10.
That's pretty bad. We don't even know how many in our own office. And then there's a South Salem office as well. But my point is, we do the intake. We ask the person who's applying for services, what difficulties are you having? What things have you already tried? Like, are you already connected to student accessibility services, things like that. And then we determine, we like I said, get that documentation for the disability-related issue. Then we are the ones determining your eligibility. So we look at 3 things. 1 is the documented disability. 2, what are the impediments that are causing it to be difficult for you to complete your training, education, or obtain or maintain employment. And then 3rd, can you benefit from our services? So our services, and Tanya, please don't hesitate to add, but our services are counseling and guidance. So we as vocational counselors might also work with you on how to, and stories, I always tell people when you interview, stories are always best, but I don't want to take up a whole lot of time telling you stories. But an example of counseling and guidance, I think, would be appropriate here. I had a client who was a physical therapist, physical therapist assistant, and he ended up with a disease that caused all of his organs to start turning to scar tissue, all of them, including the organ called skin. And so his whole body was tightening up and making it difficult for him to walk, to use his hands, everything. And he was like, they're not going to let me be a physical therapist anymore where I was working, physical therapy assistant. They're firing me, they're letting me go, and I'm never going to be able to do that again. I don't know, what to do now, because I've worked my whole life for this. And so we worked a lot on self-esteem, recognizing his strengths, accommodating, the things that were difficult for him, the things he was doing to take care of himself physically and mentally, and kind of work through, no, you do have a lot of great things to offer a business. We came up, since he didn't think he could be a physical therapist assistant anymore, he and I worked together to figure out a new job goal. So we might ask you to participate in assessments, interest inventories, targeted vocational assessments, which is like you think this might be a good goal for you, but you're not sure. So we actually go out into the community and have you try it for a day and see if it's going to work out for you. We then came up with the fact that he enjoyed doing audio-visual assistance in the library back when he was in high school. And I'm like, okay, let's look at the schools. Well, he actually found a job opportunity doing audio-visual aid for an elementary school in the Salem-Keizer School District. And he applied and he got an interview. And it was going to be a video interview. And he's like, I'm so scared because how am I going to talk about my disability with this employer? And I said, well, first of all, why would you be a good candidate? And of course, all he could think of was the negative stuff. And I'm like, wait, what do the schools want for their students? What are they teaching their students? To be accepting of others, right? To have that integrated setting, all that stuff. I said, so use your disability as the greatest reason why they should hire you. And he did. And he got the job. And he did that job until it ended. And then by that point, because he had taken a risk and did something that was scary, but he was able to make it work, and he learned a lot about himself and about the community not being as rejecting as he thought it would be. He and I then worked on finding a home health aide position. And he got hired for that part-time. And again, he had to kind of figure out some things as he went about it, but he's still doing that. I closed him vocationally successful, and I have not heard from him since, but I just wanted to show an example of counseling and guidance towards, you have your ideas, and then sometimes you try some things. We work through that. We try another thing. We help with preparing for job applications, interview practice, how to address accommodations, all those things. We do also support, you asked about people going through school. We prefer that you connect to us before you get too far down the road, just so that we can help make sure that you're getting all the support you need. We also, in fact, Tanya, in a second here, I'm going to have Tanya talk about the ICAP. You can still talk about it even though it's at Chemeketa. We can talk about how that works. Sorry about that. But it's just important to understand that we're like trying to really do wraparound services. But we could still set up those kinds of relationships here. And then, of course, after the person has obtained employment and we've worked through all those little bumps in the road, then we help make sure that everything is going well on the job until they say, I don't need you anymore, go away. And then we are like, thank you, and we close the case. And it's always an open door. People can always come back and reapply later if they have changed their mind or they've hit a new milestone in their life and they want more help again. Oh, one thing I wanted to say real quick. We are state vocational rehabilitation. We do all disabilities except legal blindness. That's with the Oregon Commission for the Blind, but we do partner with them as well.
Thank you, Sheila.
So this is Tanya, and I still consider myself brand new. I've been a counselor for about 2.5 years, and there's a lot to learn as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, but I can say that one of the coolest things is that we're really creative. We're able to talk to people and find out right where they are and what their needs are and address barriers that they know they have, sometimes that they don't even know that they have, and come up with really creative solutions. And that's been really cool. Yeah, and there's no one size fits all, that's for sure. We write individual plans for everyone, and yeah, change them as we go sometimes. I don't know, you want me to talk about ICAP?
I think you should, because I think it's important to explain how vocational rehabilitation as a state agency is trying to support students more.
So ICAP is I think it's inclusive
Career advancement.
Yeah, that's what it is. Something like that. Anyway, we're going out into the community colleges right now, primarily to really try to help people go to school and connect with our services as they do that, and then into the workforce from there. And so we help them with accommodations in school, set them up with whoever they need to talk to for financial aid, for other assistance, for paying for school. Yeah, and build that relationship while they're finishing their program, and then right there to help them get a job after. I'm new at that too. Just been doing that for a couple months.
I wanted to mention one more thing. She mentioned 2.5 years. I've been with this office for 15 years, almost 20 with the state. But anyway, I wanted to mention we also do support all employment goals. That's the end result. If you don't plan on getting a job, there's no point in applying for vocational rehabilitation. We don't just support education. We expect that that education is leading to employment, and that includes self-employment. So I wanted to throw that out there. 1099s, contract, self-employment, owning your own business. I've got 4 or 5 on my caseload right now doing self-employment.
Thank you. So speaking of self-employment, I'd like to ask Tori a question. What is some experience you've had, Tori, that might help our students, whether they want to start their own business or navigate workplaces?
Well, I wasn't planning on being self-employed when I was a student at Western. My plan, because I had it all planned out, right? And it was going to go according to the plan, was to get a job, work in maybe a small company for a few years, get some experience, and then maybe, 10, 15 years down the road, try freelancing for a little bit and see how that turned out. And if that turned out okay, then maybe I turn that into a long-term business. That is not how that happened. I applied for bunches of jobs and just ended up, freelancing while I was doing that to help keep money coming in, because, that's important too. And discovered that, I actually really, really liked freelancing. And could set up my work environment the way that I wanted it to be, which helped me quite a bit in regards to my disability, because I could choose to set up my environment in a manner that fit me perfectly, basically. I didn't have to choose to sit at a desk that was this high all day. This is really uncomfortable for me, being 4 foot something. My desk at home is significantly lower than this, and because of that, I can work 6 to 8 hour days like most other people can. If I had to work at a table this height all day, this would be massively uncomfortable, and I couldn't do it. I can choose to have meetings in places that I can get into easily. It doesn't matter what the office or the company decided to work, in this building that may be, accessible. I can set up all of those things for myself and make those choices, which I found really empowering, and also, I love it so much. And as I've kind of progressed through freelancing, I started my business officially, and named it Sparklet Designs, because it was a little spark instead of a big spark. which was fun. Anyhow, and have just continued to grow that business from there. Kind of networking is a big part of what I do, because that's how I meet new clients and that, and it was a scary sort of a thing to do at first. It's not, public speaking was never one of my top 10 favorite things to do. Would much prefer to be, reading a book in a quiet corner of a room. But over time, practice makes perfect. And networking is just a business term for making friends. You go to a networking event and you ask people, hey, what do you do for your living? And they answer you, and then you respond back, and it's just, you get to learn more and more about people, and it becomes a lot easier. Some of those things that may be frightening for you for whatever reason, it just gets so much easier over time. And they become not scary anymore, which is also delightful. And then kind of as I have progressed through it, I've been fortunate this year to grow my business to a point where I have a part-time employee, which is awesome, and also kind of scary, because then there's another person kind of that you're paying for their life stuff. But that has also provided new fun opportunities to learn and grow. And it's just kind of a never-ending learning experience that I never expected to be on, at least not right now. And largely because of my disability, that this has turned out to be something that I enjoy and really appreciate, because, like I said, you can make it kind of what you want and what you need it to be. I've kind of had this saying as I've planned through the next steps of what I want my business to be, that how my disability affects my life is largely dependent upon the environment that I put myself in. And because I can control so many things in my environment, including at my employment and what networking events that I go to and how I meet with clients, because I can meet with clients digitally, none of that has prevented me from continuing to build my business in a way that, I don't know, I guess everybody else could, I guess. I don't know a better way to phrase that at the moment, but that kind of gets.
Thank you. That was amazing. So I'm curious, does anybody have a question at the moment that they'd like to ask? And I'm not sure exactly how we're going to record that, but I'll ask a question. So for those folks who maybe don't have the control that Tori has and are in the process of sort of navigating, starting, or kind of transitioning into a company, what are some ways that what are some advice that you have for folks in that process?
Is that for any of us?
Yeah, any of us, any of you, yeah.
So you are asking transitioning from school into employment?
Yes. Yeah, how do you go about that? We've talked a little bit about advocacy or having agency, what to disclose and when, and then just kind of maybe creating a little bit more sense of control in the process.
Tori and I are probably going to share some similar answers here. Number one, I think I'd say don't, even if you're scared, even if it's uncomfortable, get out there and try things. Get out there and talk to people. Get out there and do informational interviews. As Scott was saying, get out there and volunteer. Make yourself known. Tori also mentioned networking, talking to as many people as you can, just to get out there and try things and be known, and keep letting people know what you're interested in. And then all of a sudden someday somebody says, oh, you know what? I just heard about this. I think you'd be great for it. That's one of the best ways to get out there. So when I first started school, I wanted to be a bilingual elementary school teacher. And I said, I'm going to go volunteer at an elementary school, and if I can leave at the end of the day with a smile on my face, I think I'll be okay. But you kind of got to give it a shot. You don't want to get all the way through your schooling and then get into that kind of environment and find out, oh my God, I hate it, right? So you want to check it out before you get all the way to the end of your training or schooling. I think that's really important. Those were my biggies. And if you have people in your life, this is really important too. If you have people in your life who believe in you and encourage you to keep trying no matter the difficulties or frustration that you feel, who keep supporting you and say, figure it out. Here, let's try this, try that. Go talk to that person. Having those people who believe in you and encourage you along the way is crucial to keep your motivation and your positivity to keep trying.
Those are all really good points, and I would also add, don't find like a job in, like, how to describe this? Like, don't typecast yourself into one specific role or like perfect dream job, because there isn't one of those out there. So like maybe, and don't think you're going to get it all the first position you have. So I would say also, don't be thinking about maybe your first job or your first full career job as maybe the end point, because you're likely going to switch jobs probably 7 or 8 times, I think is what I've heard. I have been pretty steady in the same job, but that's partly because I've been running an organization and starting it. It's kind of my own baby. But I would say that's important advice, because I think sometimes people get the specific, like, I got to work for this company, or I got to do this, or I got to do that, and it may not work out that way. And let's say if, for instance, you wanted to work for, I'll say Nike. If you wanted to work for Nike, I would say do all the research you can about Nike and the culture, and use LinkedIn and all the virtual tools we have to find out, are there some people I know that are there, and they can tell me, is the culture really what I like, or would I want to be there? Would I be good there? So obviously Nike's just one example. There's plenty of companies and organizations where, you could do the same kind of research. So that's what I would add.
Great, thank you. So another question I have is about sort of the formal process of transitioning. Like, how do you, what's the relationship that you need to have with human resources? What are are there forms that are required? Are there disclosures that need to happen, and when? What are just some little tips on that formal process?
So since we have 2 business owners here, we're going to skip them and go to those who actually get regular jobs. Sorry about that. So number one thing we tell people is, unless your disability is immediately noticeable, do not bring it up. Don't bring up accommodations or any of that until after the job offer. Is this what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. So in my case, I have a white cane, and it's going to be pretty obvious that I have a disability. I still got through the regular interview, but by the end of the interview, I'm like, in case, they usually say, do you have anything else you want to say or any questions? And I'll say, yeah, I just want to let you know that, I do use a screen reader, but that is all I'm going to need to do this job. Because I have to bring it up if it's something that might they're going to assume things. If I don't say something, they're going to assume things and make it much worse than it really is. In Tanya's case, her disability is not visible. I don't know what she really has, but hers is not visible. So she could come in and do the regular interview, and then they give her the job offer, and at that point, she can say, I need to request an accommodation. I may need to take some time off now and then for my disability, so I would like to do an accommodation request. She is talking to the manager, the supervisor, somebody like that. They provide her with usually like contact information or a form to request an accommodation. She follows up with that to the HR department, the Human Resources Department. They are the only ones, the HR department is the only one who will have disability documentation. So that means if they say we need to know what your disability is in order to justify this, let's say sound canceling headset at your cubicle, you would provide to them your diagnosis, or whatever it may be, anxiety, ADHD, whatever it is. But your supervisor or manager does not get that information, and they cannot keep that information in your office file. It's only in the main HR department. Now, regarding accommodations, you are requesting reasonable accommodations. I had to do a new one not too long ago. And so they send me a form and they say, what is it you're requesting and why do you need it? And so I would explain, I need help with transportation to and from places during the workday because I cannot drive and it will take too long to take the buses and all that. I need, a screen reader to access the computer screen because I cannot see it because I'm blind. The manager then gets the list of accommodations from the HR department, and they have to provide those accommodations because the HR department has already cleared it. I wanted to mention, though, that I was talking to somebody the other day that has an autism spectrum disorder, works for the state, and we were talking about the accommodations he needed. And as we went through the list, I said, okay, tell me what you need. He said, I need from the supervisor the agenda for the meeting that they're calling me to, because if I don't know what they're going to talk to me about, I stress out so bad that I have a panic attack. And so we wrote it down. And then he said, I can't have the meeting with the supervisor go more than 15 minutes because my mind can't handle more than that amount of stress at a time. We wrote that one down. And then he said, during meetings, sometimes I say something and then somebody says something that's very dismissive and rude. And I said, okay, that's where we need to stop. That's not a reasonable accommodation for the manager to have to sit there and tell people to be nice to you. That is not a reasonable accommodation. That is a personality issue with your coworkers. We need to talk about how you are going to manage dealing with people who are not nice in your office. But that is not a reasonable accommodation for the manager to provide. Does that make sense? Okay. Personality, not accommodation. That's all I can think of.
Thank
I
you.
would just add one little perspective thing, just from my perspective. Think about your disability as an asset too, and I 100% agree. Don't share your disability unless you have to. And like for me, obviously, I'm also the elephant in the room, disability, so I kind of need to address it when I'm talking to people. And I would say in that case, or in most cases, just be ready to talk about like the asset that you're able, like how your disability has created an asset for you. Like what positive strengths has that created? And so that is great stuff to bring up with, if need be. That's good stuff to bring up with employers, just because then it shows like I'm aware of this and this is how it's contributing for me in a positive way as well. Just the kind of reframing the disabilities, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Scott, I'm going to reframe that again.
Sure.
The benefit to their business for having you there.
Absolutely,
Yep.
that too.
Wonderful, thank you. That concludes the panel portion of this event today. I want to thank the audience that's watching the live stream and thank the panel. I'd like to give them a nice warm thank you.